The first thing Mrs. Camille Ortiz noticed, when she walked into the third-grade Mother's Day tea at Larkspur Elementary at 9:15 in the morning, was the empty chair. She had taught third grade for 19 years. She had hosted this tea on the second Friday of every May for 16 of them. She had learned to scan the room from the doorway as she came in, before the children turned to see her. She had learned where the empty chairs would be, because she had learned which children in her class were quiet about which parts of their lives, and which ones were not. The empty chair this year was at the end of the long table by the window. It had a folded paper place card in front of it with a name written in a careful 8-year-old hand. The name was Mom. The card was set just behind a small plate that held a single chocolate-frosted cupcake, untouched, and a paper napkin folded into the shape of a swan with a wobble in one wing. The girl in the chair next to it was Tess Booker. She was 8. She was the daughter of a single dad whose wife had died of complications during a sudden brain bleed when Tess was 3. Tess had been waiting for this Friday for 6 weeks. She had been the one who chose the cupcake. She had been the one who folded the swan. Mrs. Ortiz set down her own teacup very carefully on the corner of her desk. The narration steps closer now. It rides Camille Ortiz. The other 21 children in the class had a mother in their seat already, or a grandmother, or in 2 cases an older sister who had come on a day off from the community college. The room was warm with low conversation and the rustle of paper napkins. The cupcakes were the small white paper cup kind, frosted thick. There was a lemonade pitcher on a side table. There was a small recital program in 8-year-old handwriting on every chair. Tess was sitting up very straight. She had her hands folded in her lap. She was not looking at the door. She was looking at the cupcake on the empty plate, polite, the way she had been taught to wait without asking. Mrs. Ortiz had known, from the homeroom intake form in September, that Tess was being raised by her father alone. She had known from the parent-teacher conference in October that the father did not have a partner. She had known from the school's social worker in February that Wyatt Booker, the father, had not yet remarried and was unlikely to. She had asked Tess 2 weeks earlier when the invitations went out whether she wanted Mrs. Ortiz to include her name on the list. Tess had said, polite, that she would like to bring her dad if it was all right. Mrs. Ortiz had said it was all right. She had said the school called this a Mother's Day tea by tradition, but that anyone who loved a child could fill that chair. Tess had said, polite, that she would like to bring her dad. Wyatt Booker had called the school that Tuesday and said he could not come. He had a delivery job that paid him for the day. He could not afford to lose the day. He had asked if Mrs. Ortiz might let Tess know in a kind way and not say that he had called. Mrs. Ortiz had told Tess, in a kind way the next morning, that Mr. Booker had a work meeting that he could not get out of. Tess had said, polite, okay, Mrs. Ortiz. She had folded the place card Mom that night at the kitchen table by herself. The narration seized the room now. It was 9:20. The recital was scheduled to begin at 9:30. The children were going to sing 2 songs and then read short letters from their seats. The letters were called Letters to the One Who Holds Me. Mrs. Ortiz had renamed the assignment 3 years earlier to make room for the children whose mothers were not in the room. Tess had written a letter to her dad. She had it folded in her lap under her hands. She had practiced reading it 3 times in the kitchen the night before. The empty chair sat beside her. At 9:22, the door of the classroom opened, and a woman came in. She was about 40. She was wearing a soft gray cashmere sweater, a navy skirt that fell modestly below the knee, and quiet flats. She had a small, tasteful pin on her lapel that said Larkspur Elementary Volunteer. She had a paper plate in her hands with 3 home-baked oatmeal cookies on it, wrapped in cling film. She looked to anyone who did not know her, like one of the kindergarten room mothers who came in to read on Wednesdays. Her name, Mrs. Ortiz would learn that afternoon, was Helena Sandoval. She was the chief financial officer of a hospital network downtown. She was 41. She had been widowed at 29 when her husband had died in a sudden car accident on a winter highway. She had not had children of her own. She had been a Wednesday reader at Larkspur Elementary for 2 years because, she had told the principal once, the only place in the city where she did not feel like a CFO was a kindergarten classroom with a picture book in her lap. She had come to the Mother's Day tea uninvited this year because the principal had asked her, the Monday before, if she could fill in for a Wednesday reader who was out sick. The principal had not said anything about a Friday tea. Helena had simply, on her way out at noon on Monday, noticed the third-grade tea on the office calendar, and asked if there was anything she could bring. The principal had said cookies would be lovely. Helena had baked them Tuesday night. She walked into Mrs. Ortiz's classroom at 9:22 on Friday morning with a paper plate of oatmeal cookies and saw, from the doorway, what Mrs. Ortiz had seen. She saw the empty chair. She saw the place card. She saw the swan with the wobble in one wing. She saw the little girl with her hands folded in her lap who was not looking at the door because she had been taught to wait without asking. Helena Sandoval did not look at Mrs. Ortiz. She did not ask for permission. She walked in her quiet flats across the classroom carpet to the long table by the window. She set the plate of oatmeal cookies down on the side table beside the lemonade pitcher. She walked over to the empty chair beside Tess Booker. She knelt down to the height of an 8-year-old. She said, quiet, "Excuse me, I'm Mrs. Sandoval. I read on Wednesdays sometimes. Would it be all right if I sat in this chair for the recital? I came without a child to sit beside, and I would feel very lucky if you would let me sit beside you." Tess Booker looked up at her. She looked at the empty chair. She looked back at Helena. She said, polite, "I saved that chair for my mom." Helena Sandoval said, "I know, sweetheart, I see the place card. I am not asking to be in your mom's seat. I am asking if I could sit with you for the recital, so the seat is not empty when you read." Tess thought about this for a long moment. She said, level, the way an 8-year-old is level when she has been the steady one in a small 2-person family for 5 years. You can sit in the chair, but the place card stays. Helena said, "The place card stays." She sat down. The room did not pretend to look away. The witness narration, through Mrs. Ortiz at the front of the classroom, sees 21 other mothers and grandmothers, and the 2 older sisters watch Helena Sandoval lower herself into the chair beside Tess Booker without taking the place card down, without moving the cupcake, without moving the swan napkin. She set her hands in her lap. She did not touch the plate. Tess looked at her. Tess said, quiet, "I have a cupcake for you, but I didn't know to fold a swan." Helena said, "I don't need a swan, sweetheart." Tess said, "I'll fold you one anyway, after." Helena said, "Thank you, I would like that very much." Mrs. Ortiz at the front of the room did not let her own face move. She walked to the piano. She played the opening chords of the first song. The children stood, they sang. The recital lasted 28 minutes. When it was time for the letters, the children read them one by one from their seats. Mrs. Ortiz had let them choose the order. Tess Booker was 11th. She stood up beside her chair. She unfolded the letter she had written to her dad. The room was quiet. She looked just once at Helena Sandoval beside her. Helena nodded. Tess read. The letter was 38 words long. It said in 8-year-old's careful sentences that her dad was the one who got her ready in the morning, that he made her breakfast every day, that he packed her lunch with a folded paper napkin she had drawn a heart on, that he was the one who held her, that she loved him. The room clapped. Tess sat down. Helena Sandoval beside her did not move her hand from her own lap. She did not put her arm around Tess. She did not say anything. She simply sat with her hands folded in her own lap the same way Tess had folded hers, and she let the moment be what it was. The narration sees the rest of the morning land in small, quiet beats. At the end of the recital, Helena Sandoval went to the lemonade table. She poured a small cup for herself and a smaller cup for Tess. She brought both cups back to the long table. She did not eat the cupcake. She drank her lemonade slowly. Tess drank her lemonade slowly. They did not say much. The room emptied. Other mothers came over to Mrs. Ortiz to thank her. 2 of them kindly came to introduce themselves to Helena, who they did not know. Helena was polite to each of them. She did not say who she was. When Mrs. Ortiz dismissed the class at 10:40, Helena stood up. She turned to Tess. She said, polite, "Thank you for letting me sit in the chair." Tess said, polite, "Thank you for coming." Helena said, "Would you like me to fold a swan for the place card before I go, so your mom has one too?" Tess thought about this. She said, "Yes, please." Helena Sandoval folded a swan out of a clean paper napkin from the side table. She folded slowly. Her hands were steady. She had not folded a paper swan since the year she had been pregnant 12 years earlier with a child she had lost at 14 weeks and never named. She did not say that to Tess. She finished the swan. She set it in front of the mom place card. The swan's wing was not wobbly. Tess looked at it. Tess said, "Thank you, Mrs. Sandoval." Helena said, "Thank you, Tess." The narration steps then to the rest of the day, and then a year forward, in the way the niche steps when the heart is the engine and the time jump is gentle. That afternoon Helena Sandoval stayed after dismissal and asked Mrs. Ortiz quietly in the hallway who the father was. Mrs. Ortiz told her his name. Helena said she would like, if Mrs. Ortiz did not mind, to drop off the cookies she had not brought home, 3 left on the plate at the Booker address, in case Tess wanted one in her lunch on Monday. Mrs. Ortiz gave her the address. Helena did not knock. She left the plate on the front step of the small ranch house on Henley Road at 4:50 in the afternoon with a folded note that said, in her own careful adult hand, "Mr. Booker, your daughter is the steadiest 8-year-old I have ever met. She saved a chair this morning. I hope you do not mind that someone sat in it so the seat was not empty when she read. The cookies are oatmeal. H. Sandoval, Larkspur Wednesday reader." She did not give a phone number. She walked back to her car. She drove home. Wyatt Booker came home from the delivery shift at 5:30. He found the cookies. He read the note. He sat down on the front step. He sat for 10 minutes. He went inside. He put the cookies on the counter. He hugged his daughter. He asked her gentle about the tea. She told him polite that a nice lady had sat in the chair with her. She told him polite that the lady had folded a swan. She told him polite that the swan's wing was straight. Wyatt Booker did not say anything for a long moment. He said, "Level, Tess, do you want to write Mrs. Sandoval a thank you note?" Tess said, "Yes, Daddy, please." He helped her find the address through the school directory. They walked it to the post office together on Saturday morning. The note was 22 words long. It said in Tess's careful hand, "Dear Mrs. Sandoval, thank you for sitting in the chair. The swan's wing was perfect. Love, Tess." Helena Sandoval got the note on Tuesday. She wrote back on Wednesday. The narration steps forward a year. A year later, the Larkspur Elementary 3rd grade Mother's Day tea opened with 22 children in their chairs, 22 place cards on 22 plates, and 22 adults in the visitor seats. There were no empty chairs. Tess Booker, now 9, had a place card that said Mom with a small handwritten asterisk beside it. Mrs. Ortiz had asked Tess in the days before the tea whether the asterisk was all right. Tess had said yes. The asterisk meant that the seat would be filled by Helena Sandoval, who, in the year since the cookies on the front step, had become a steady presence at the Booker dinner table on Thursday nights. She and Wyatt were not yet married. They were not in a hurry. They were taking the time the niche knows to take. Helena had kept her job. Wyatt had kept his delivery shift. Tess had folded swans now in 3 different sizes. Mrs. Ortiz, at the piano, played the opening chords of the first song. The children stood, they sang. The witness narration closes on Tess Booker reading the same letter she had read the year before, with one new sentence at the bottom. The new sentence said, "And thank you to the lady who sat in the chair." The room clapped. Tess sat down. Helena Sandoval beside her put her hand very quietly on Tess's shoulder. It stayed there. Mrs. Camille Ortiz, at the front of the room, would teach for 11 more years before she retired. She would tell this story at her retirement dinner. She would say that the Mother's Day tea had taught her the niche's quiet truth. That family is not always made by birth, and it is not always made by speed. Sometimes it is made by a woman who notices an empty chair from a doorway and asks an 8-year-old's permission to fill it and brings the cookies anyway. Sometimes it is made by a single dad who reads a note on a front step and sits down for 10 minutes. Sometimes it is made by a child who saves a seat for a mother she remembers in a swan-folded napkin. She would say that she had been very glad to watch. She would say that the chair had never really been empty. It had only been waiting.